As much as I enjoyed the first season and how it set a great foundation for the series to come, it's impossible to deny that season 2 was a significant improvement. While there were still a couple episodes I really wasn't a fan of, the overall quality of the episodes is much better than that of season 1's. It's also the point where the showrunners knew what they wanted to do with the franchise, and tried to take a lot more risks with the storytelling. It also helps that the Brony community was still thriving around the time this season aired. In fact, there are a couple episodes that speak with the community, ranging from episodes that are a metaphor to them, or even canonizing a character from the fans, even if her first speaking role led to some controversy.
I just don't know what went wrong. Yeah, it's a mystery.
As for the episodes themselves, like I said, the overall quality is much stronger, with only a couple bad episodes and much more good episodes. In fact, I want to give some honorable mentions to The Return of Harmony, The Super Speedy Cider Squeezy 6000, and A Friend Indeed. All great episodes, but only one of them had to be in the top 5. Of course, there are still some episodes that range from meh to mediocre, but beyond the bottom 2, they're not as bad as some of the worst from the previous season. So much so I did go a bit back and forth on some entries in the bottom 5. But I think I'm confident with both my favorite and least favorite entries in this list. So it's time we take a look at them now. You should all know the rules by this point. These are all based off of my opinions, and you may disagree with me on some of them. And I wouldn't mind hearing what your favorite and least favorite episodes are in the comments section below. Anyways, with all that said, here's my top 5 favorite and least favorite episodes of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, Season 2. The Last Roundup. Applejack is preparing for the Canterlot Rodeo to win first prize and use the prize money towards Ponyville. However, time passes and she hasn't returned. In fact, she sends them a letter saying she won't be coming back and will be sending them the money at a later date. Confused, the rest of the main 6 go search for her and find her in a cherry farm. Asking for an explanation, Applejack refuses. Here we have an episode with a good message that's ultimately tainted by an underwhelming execution. Again, I don't think this episode's bad, but honestly I was just kind of bored by it. The plot pretty much goes exactly where you think it's gonna go. Applejack heads off to win in the contest. She doesn't come back. The main 6 try to find her. She tries to hide the secret from him up until they figure out the truth that she didn't win. But as I said before, predictability isn't the end-all be-all when it comes to storytelling. It all just comes down to how it's executed. And this is where my problems with the episode start to show. It's pretty much just going with the motions up until we get to the reveal. Sure, they do throw in a few comedic moments, whether it's visual gags or the dialogue, and some of them got chuckles out of me. With shoutouts to the Pinkie Promise getting the biggest laughs out of me, mainly with seeing a furious Pinkie Pie.
No pony breaks a pinky promise! Applejack! You pinky promise!
But beyond that, I just felt nothing watching it. I give it credit for having a good message about how lying could be worse than you think it might be, something I could definitely relate with. But the journey to get to that point really wasn't worth it. Again, not bad, but could have been so much better.
I'm sorry, Pinky, but I can't tell y'all the truth. I just can't.
Well, I heard a sorry in there, so that'll have to do for now. I'll get a real apology later. Rarity catches what? Pinky?
Mystery on the Friendship Express. In this episode, the cakes are preparing for a giant cake for a dessert contest in Canterlot. Pinkie is in charge of getting it sent via an overnight train along with the other contestants. However, when her guard is down, someone ends up taking a huge bite of the cake. So she begins an investigation to find the culprit responsible for this sweet travesty. This episode is all over the place and I absolutely love it. In contrast to the last entry, this one just has a lot of fun with its parody angles and kept my attention throughout most of it. Yes, some of the moments do go on for a bit, but even in spite of that, they still leave a big smile on my face. From the various film parodies ranging from Mystery, Jane Bond Spy, Ninja, and even black and white silent film. Of course, the main meat is the mystery angle, and I'm happy to say that it got me invested. Not only is the dynamic between the silly Pinkie Pie and the straight man Twilight hilarious at times.
Should we start looking for clues? Perfect silly question, my dear Twilight, because the obvious answer is... yes? No, because I know who did it!
But the episode also throws in plenty of twists and turns to keep the audience invested. Keeps the clues subtle but still open to interpretation, so they don't immediately figure out the culprit, and that way they can narrow down the mystery gradually. Overall, I had a lot of fun with this episode. The mystery is engaging, the humor is great, plus it's just a nice little nod to film genres. I can't help but love it.
What? Is it a crime to change one's style now and again? Why, I think it's a crime not to.
Really?
Fine, I'm guilty. I wear both eyelashes.
Baby cakes. The cakes welcome the birth of twins, Pound and Pumpkin Cake. Pinkie is the most excited as she loves playing with them, but when the couple have a huge delivery to fill, Pinkie offers to babysit, much to their hesitation. Eventually, they let her take on the responsibility, however, Pinkie has a lot to learn about taking care of children. I feel like your enjoyment of this episode is really going to come down to if you find the shenanigans between the Cake Twins and Pinkie charming and funny, or annoying. I find myself in the middle of the pack, but leaning slightly closer to the people who don't, unfortunately. I've said before that my taste in babies in media really comes down to their charm factor, and once it wears off, you're just left with the usual baby stuff. In regards to the Cake Twins, the charm factor does not exist here.
Tough crowd. Tell me about it.
I mean, I guess the oddities were mildly amusing, but for the most part, they're just crying, and I could see people getting really annoyed with it. As for Pinkie Pie, she's, well, conflicting. Sometimes she gets a chuckle or laugh out of me, and other times it's just crickets. But with the exception of her terrible song, she never really got on my nerves. There's also the message about responsibility and parenting, but does the episode really earn that message? I mean, it's mostly Pinkie just f***ing around with the Cake Twins, and her struggling to get them under control. Honestly, if not for some of the decent humor, this episode could have had a shot at being bad. Sometimes comedy can go a long way in saving an episode, ranging from the dominant and recessive jeans joke with how two Earth ponies had a unicorn and a Pegasus, to the whole running gag with the bag of flour. All in all, this episode was just really mediocre, and I feel one or two more negative aspects would have risked this episode being considered bad.
Oh, don't make me do it, guys. You know what happens when you mix flour and water, don't you?
Read it and weep. After sustaining serious injury, Rainbow Dash has to be bedridden at the hospital until her wing recovers. In the meantime, she's left with nothing to do and thus ends up bored. Twilight suggests reading a novel about an adventurous mare known as Daring Do, but Rainbow Dash refuses, thinking it's for eggheads and beyond her interests. That is until the temptations from her boredom get the best of her and she caves in while no one else is looking. She ends up loving the novel, but grows self-conscious about how her friends will react to this. Oh, I relate with this episode so much. It's sometimes hard for me to admit when I was wrong about something, especially with the growing guilt of the way you acted all this time beforehand. Heck, I'm almost convinced that this episode's a metaphor for the brony community. What looks like something that only appeals to its target demographic has grown to become a global phenomenon. Even I was hesitant about going into this show, and it took some convincing to get me into it. But as I alluded to earlier, this doesn't just apply to that. Any sort of interest can be a victim to that. Whether it's a movie, a TV show, video games, literature, even real-life essentials like food or people. Anyone who's in this situation can relate with Rainbow Dash. Even I've been trying to improve on this stigma. And thankfully, beyond that, the episode was just so fun. I love the story behind Daring Do, being a nice homage to Indiana Jones. And even the antics in the real world are hilarious. Sure, Rainbow Dash does commit the crime of breaking and entering, and that scene was unfortunately poorly structured, with her attempting to steal the book instead of just reading it there. You could have rewritten that part and you wouldn't lose that much. But that's really my only complaint with the episode. So overall, I do really love this episode. It tackles a subject I relate to while still managing to be entertaining throughout most of it.
With daring do out of the way, the world will suffer mightily at my hands. I am victorious!
I'll take that.
What? No!
Better luck next time, Awizoto.
Dragon Quest. In this episode, Spike is experiencing an existential crisis when, during the dragon migration, his friends treat him as not being tough or mighty as a real dragon. So he ventures off to follow the dragons to find himself and become one of them. He approaches a teen group of dragons and they decide to try and man him up to become one of them. What, you thought this episode would be at the bottom? Yeah, I kind of thought so too, but alas, I don't think this episode is quite as bad as I was expecting it. Oh, it still has plenty of problems. For one, I find it hard to believe that no pony in Equestria know how dragons work. I mean, wasn't Dragon Shy about trying to find a way to escort a dragon out of the mountains? Regardless if they knew anything about dragons during that episode, you'd think they would have remembered some stuff. Oh, you want an example from this season? How about in Secret of My Excess? When Sakura is the one who knows about dragon's greed and how they grow from it. Maybe it's worth asking if she knows anything else? I don't know, it just seems really confusing. There's also this whole situation of Spike feeling insecure about being soft, and I can't tell if the main six are just doing playful ribbing, or unintentionally just being rude to him. And yet the episode also says that he belongs with them. I'm honestly hoping for the former. Where I feel the episode picks up is when we get to the dragons. I know a lot of people aren't a fan of these dragons, especially Garble, and I thought I was going to fall in line with that, especially since they're portrayed as stereotypes. But I understand they are just teens and they could be kind of awkward, trust me. And it's believable that Spike would want to interact with someone like that in order to be more manly. So I can cut it the slightest bit of slack. And hey, at least Garble's more tolerable than Trixie, being the character you're supposed to root against, and he does end up getting some comeuppances here and there.
They got away! I hate that!
Really, this episode is a mix of good and bad elements. And I can understand why some people would really hate this episode. But for me, at worst, it's just mediocre, while at best, it's tolerable. Which is more than I could say for the two episodes ranked below it.
King of the... Looks like this is another fail for you, little Spike.
Sisterhood Social. In this episode, Rarity is in charge of watching over her little sister, Sweetie Belle. However, despite her best efforts, she only comes across as a nuisance to Rarity, causing a rift between their relationship. No matter how hard Sweetie Belle tries, she ultimately can't make it to Rarity without her shutting her out. That is until Rarity comes across something she made for her as she realizes her mistake. So when the Sisterhood Social comes around, she has to find a way to make it up to Sweetie Belle. As an older brother myself, I can't help but picture myself ending up in Rarity's situation. As much as I love and care about my little sister, sometimes she could be a huge pain in the ass. But at the end of the day, it's pretty much something that all siblings go through. What matters is that in our time of needs, we'll be there for each other. And thankfully, the relationship between Rarity and Sweetie Belle is executed perfectly. Like, it's practically Lilo and Stitch levels with its sweet and realistic sibling dynamic. With Rarity having to take charge of her little sister, but ultimately being so focused on her own lifestyle that it causes a rift between them. And none of it feels melodramatic. Sure, Rarity does oversell her realization, but it fits with her personality, so I can let that slide. On top of that, Sweetie Belle doesn't instantly forgive Rarity when she realizes her mistake. If it did that, then that would be a huge dock in points. No, instead Rarity has to earn Sweetie Belle's forgiveness by showing how much she cares about her. There's even little bits of detail in how she shows that, by having her cover herself in mud and switch places with Applejack, despite how Rarity's not the kind of person to get down and dirty. It's subtle detail like that that makes this episode feel genuine. And while I don't think it's quite as funny as some of the other episodes, there were still some jokes that got a laugh out of me. Like how Sweetie Belle attempts to clean up Rarity's room only to discover that she made that mess intentionally. I know that moment was meant to be taken seriously, but it subverted my expectations, so it managed to give me a giggle. I also love the race that Rarity and Sweetie Belle go through, and the resolution has a bit of an added punchline when it turns out Applejack was basically holding her breath under mud. How she managed to hold her breath under there for that long is astounding. So you have a good story with great heart and decent humor, making for probably the best feel-good episode from the show so far. The only reason it's not higher on the list is just because I prefer the following two episodes a bit more. But beggars can't be choosers, I guess.
Sweetie Belle, my one and only sister, what have I done? All the time I could have spent with you was wasted, complaining and wishing you were gone. Woe is me.
Cutie pox. Apple Bloom is still upset about not getting her cutie mark, so when she comes across Sakura, she learns about an herb that is believed to give anyone that consumes it what they want. In this case, a cutie mark. So Apple Bloom attempts to conjure up a concoction with it and use it to earn a cutie mark by force. But this backfires as she ends up getting multiple cutie marks and even making her perform these special talents uncontrollably. You know, I was struggling to come up with good things to say about this episode because I wanted to give it the benefit of the doubt. But beyond the occasional good joke, I could barely come up with anything. My biggest problem with the episode is that the story is manufactured as f***. The episode starts with Apple Bloom being really blunt that she didn't get her cutie mark. Her friends try to cheer her up, she goes to Sakura for answers, and she just so happens to have a plot device that might help her get a cutie mark by brute force, and Apple Bloom decides to use it behind her back, but it ends up backfiring to a point that she tells everybody the truth, and now they had to find a way to undo the mess. They just go through the motions with no real twists or turns, and it's just boring. Because I know what the outcome is going to be from the second they start the setup, and it doesn't even attempt to do anything to make it worth the while. And this episode has less of the excuse of intended age demographic. How is it you go from Lesson 0 and Sisterhood Social to this mess? I got nothing. This episode was just an irritating snooze fest. And I have no idea what I was thinking when I wanted to cut this episode the slightest bit of slack. Honestly, I feel like this should be a shoo-in for the top spot, but there's still one episode that kind of annoyed me more.
Another cutie mark? Ha! I guess that last trick was a lot of hoopla. Those cutie marks are fake!
Lesson 0. After Twilight discovers she hasn't submitted anything to Celestia about what she learned about friendship, she fears what will happen if she ends up tardy. To prevent this, she desperately searches for a friendship problem with her friends, except they seem perfectly fine and even tell her not to make a big deal out of it. But the growing paranoia causes her to take drastic measures to get a friendship problem to resolve and report. Here we have what I consider the show's magnum opus. With not only how it tries to improve on Twilight's letter arc from the first season, by allowing the rest of the main six to send in their reports on friendship alongside Twilight. That way they don't have to feel obligated to shoehorn in Twilight to adhere to the arc. But this was the episode where the staff really started to take risks that end up paying off. Essentially, the entire episode is about Twilight's growing anxiety, and the way it's presented makes me surprised that Hasbro is okay with showing it to children. It kind of reminds me a lot of Plankton Paranoia from SpongeBob, where it tries to apply dark comedy to the subject of anxiety miraculously without it coming across as tasteless. And yeah, seeing Twilight mad and insane was both hilarious and scary. Because speaking as someone who can easily get a bit anxious at times, I could picture myself end up making a terrible decision out of fear. It's a great precautionary tale about not letting fear control your actions. And the way Twilight acts makes it feel straight out of one of those horror movies. So it's less about a joke at Twilight's expense.
Twilight. How's it going?
Great. Just great. You three look like you're doing great, too. Looks like three good friends who obviously don't need the help of another good friend.
And even some of the jokes not related to Twilight's anxiety are hilarious. With probably my favorite joke being Fluttershy tackling a bear head on, right as Twilight is about to ask if she has any problems. Only for it to be revealed that it's just physical therapy. That part got the biggest laughs out of me. Speaking of whom, it's also interesting how the rest of the main six also learn a bit of a lesson. Don't dismiss your friends' worries regardless of how you feel about them. Which is a good lesson for the show's themes. And all in all, I can pretty much see why this episode is so beloved. And honestly, I don't think the show would have been what it's become today if not for this episode.
It'll be all over. My time in Ponyville, my advanced studies. No, you're a good student. You can do this. Oh, but what if I can't? You can. You just have to keep it together. Keep it together.
A Canterlot Wedding Part 1. In his first act, Twilight receives an invitation for her and her friends to attend and even prepare for the wedding of Shining Armor, Twilight's older brother and captain of the Canterlot Guards, and Princess Miyamura Cadenza, aka Cadence, the Princess of Love and Twilight's old babysitter. However, Twilight is glum about how her brother just casually let Celestia invite her instead of him asking Twilight personally. At Canterlot, when she confronts him, he explains that this was done due to his role as captain and the risk of an approaching threat during the ceremony. Meanwhile, when Twilight reunites with Cadence, she notices how she's acting strange, even nasty. So Twilight looks deeper into this. So, I was debating on whether this counted as its own separate episode, or if it counted as a whole with Part 2. In fact, I almost put Return of Harmony Parts 1 and 2 together in my top 5. But that was because the quality between Parts 1 and 2 were consistent with each other, so separating them would be kind of redundant. You probably know where I'm going with this. Part 1 is so much worse than Part 2. Like, so much worse. All this episode is just build up to the climax, which I'd be fine with if it was at least handled well, but it really wasn't, at least in my opinion. I don't have a problem with Shining Armor and Princess Cadence's sudden introduction as much as other people. I mean, yeah, it does feel kinda late to bring them up now, especially since Twilight had a very strong connection with both of them as a child. But I can suspend my disbelief just enough to let that slide. No, my problems with the episode is how it just steamrolls a bunch of cliches in the story without doing anything unique or interesting with them, making it feel annoyingly predictable. Like, we as the audience know something's up with her, but we have to succumb to the whole misunderstandings and none of the other characters besides Twilight catching on to some weird behavior. Or the stupid melodramatic breakup sequence. And seriously, this is the stuff Sisterhood Social was trying to avoid doing. I mean, why not have at least one of the other ponies notice something a bit suspicious with Cadence? I'm not sure on who would fit that role well, but what if Twilight consulted Princess Luna about the situation? I mean, we don't see her do that much in this episode as she's relegated to mostly cameos in both parts 1 and the ending of part 2. And I'm not just saying that as one of those Luna fanboys. You could maybe have Twilight consult her, maybe have them both investigate the situation in order to come to a conclusion. I don't know, I'm really grasping for straws on how they could have improved on this episode. Honestly, the best solution I could think of was just make it a 1-hour special. Honestly, I think A Canterlot Wedding as a whole would land itself in B tier, because part 2 of the episode is so much better. With a great villain in Chrysalis, the epic and hilarious battle with the main 6 and the Changelings, and especially this day Aria, this episode's villain song that would make Disney quake in their boots. If anything, it just makes part 1 look even worse, because I'm certain it was possible for the writers to make the first act work. What doesn't help is that you have to watch this episode. You can't skip out on it, which is a cardinal sin in terms of bad episodes. At least with Cutie Pox, I could just pretend that episode doesn't exist and move on. If I'm forced to watch a bad episode in order to get a better understanding of what's to come in the future, that's a problem. Honestly, I don't even know what else there is to say about this episode. It's just painfully cliche, and it doesn't even have the engagement or humor to back it up. Because of that, I have no problems calling A Candlelight Wedding Part 1 my least favorite episode of Season 2.
Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go and comfort my bride. And you can forget about being my best mare. In fact, if I were you, I wouldn't show up to the wedding at all.
Hurricane Fluttershy. Ponyville has been selected to supply the rainwater of Cloudsdale to produce the rain clouds around Equestria. Rainbow Dash leads the Pegasi and try to overtake the quota and set a new record for wing power, putting everyone's best foot, or wing, forward. The only one not willing to take part in it is Fluttershy, because the idea of screwing up and becoming a laughingstock like she was in flight school as a kid triggers her anxiety. Despite this, she tries to put in the effort to prove herself and the others wrong. Hurricane Fluttershy falls into the category of one of those perfect episodes. All the pieces fit together, no exceptions, and never at any point does it feel like it dips in quality. The themes this episode tries to get across are excellent, with Fluttershy overcoming her self-doubt and past trauma, training herself to be capable alongside the rest of the Pegasi, without sacrificing her personality, especially since even with training, she only barely shows improvement and doesn't match the rest of the team. The episode could have easily thrown her a bone and have her match the levels of everyone else. But no, the writers understand how unrealistic that would sound, especially in a world of ponies. But it assures her and the audience that it's okay. It's not always about being on par with everyone else. It's all about your contribution to the team, which is a fantastic lesson to teach, as this can apply to any situation regardless of how big or small it might be. It also helps that every character in this episode is really likable. You really want to root for Fluttershy to face her inner demons. Rainbow Dash is a great motivator with her never give up no BS attitude, but she's still understanding of Fluttershy's fears. Plus her motivation shifts from trying to beat the record to getting the minimum, after several of their flyers revealed to be sick. Top that off with great humor, solid animation, and you got one fantastic episode. Definitely my pick for the best episode of Season 2, and possibly my favorite episode of the show so far.
You aren't gonna go quit just because of that, are you? Yes! But I need you!
I'm sorry, Rainbow Dash. I just don't have the courage right now.
So those are my favorite and least favorite episodes of Season 2. It was a fun romp, and I hope to find more seasons like this one in the near future. That said, I'm not expecting it right away as I enter probably the most divisive season of the show. Whether it ends up being good or bad in my opinion, we'll just have to wait and see. But until then, I want to thank you all for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell to be notified when my next video is coming out. And also let me know what your favorite and least favorite episodes of Season 2 are in the comments below. Now, if you'll excuse me, I gotta go continue applying for my master's degree. Wish me the best of luck, and I hope to see you all in the next one. Bye.